been an emotional 24 hours for Prince Harry, the Duke holding back tears as he wrapped up his 8-hour testimony in London's High Court. Harry is testifying against the publisher of the Daily Mirror, the tabloid paper he claims ruined his childhood. Here to give us the inside scoop is Associate Editor of UK's Daily Telegraph, Camilla Tominey. Camilla, good morning to you. Another big day. Harry was very emotional, huh?
We were all emotional, Carl. Been plugged into it for 2 days and it's been quite gruelling. Let's just caveat this entire conversation by saying that from a journalistic standpoint, phone hacking was deplorable. There were people who weren't phone hacking that helped to expose what was a stain on the journalistic profession. And if he has been phone hacked, then he's absolutely right to go to court, to fight it, to hold the Mirror Group and the other 2 newspaper groups accountable if that is what has happened. What we've witnessed over the last 48 hours is a questioning of his testimony. And he's tried to make this trial more than just phone hacking. He's tried to make this a sort of trial of the media, of his treatment of the media, by the media, of the intrusion into his life. And while people may well have sympathy with what he's been saying about the intimate details of his life being poured over to a great extent by the tabloids, he has been put through the mill on these 33 articles he claims were obtained by hacking. And the barrister for the Mirror Group newspapers picked through them all very forensically and made suggestions that there may be other plausible explanations why these stories came to pass. Some of the stories had already been published. Some of the stories had been briefed by the palace. Some of the stories may have been leaked, unfortunately, by his friends or indeed relatives of his ex-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. There was one example which will appeal to today viewers, in the sense, Carl, that there was an incident where he ended up in Noosa and he was on the beach. And he basically suggested the only way a photographer could have found out about that, or a newspaper, is if he was hacked. But then you and I know, because my brother got married in Noosa, that if Prince Harry turned up in Noosa with an entourage, pretty much everybody would know about it. Somebody would phone a local hack, and the next thing you know, the place would be swarming with photographers. Does it mean he was hacked? You know, this is what the court is going to have to decide. But it's been grueling because I've looked at this bloke and I've sort of thought, this is about something much, much bigger than this case. This is about his one-man quest to reform a media he still blames for his mother's death. He also blames for the treatment of his wife. And he just simply can't move past this point, Carl. Yeah,
well, you're 100% right about Noosa as well. I mean, everyone's got a phone in Noosa as well. What happens now, though, Camilla?
Carl, honestly, I'm just trying to give a pretty balanced approach here, and you are right to say, yes, people in Noosa do own phones. It may well be, you know, the balance of probabilities that needs to be achieved in order to prove hacking. It's a lower threshold than a criminal trial. This is a civil trial. He needs to prove that he was probably hacked. The Mirror Group needs to prove that he probably wasn't. So, you know, it's going to take weeks. There are more witnesses to come forward because it's a group claim. Who knows what happens? You then have to ask yourself, even if he wins, does he also lose? Because he's once again made all of these personal revelations about himself, his life, and his nearest and dearest. I mean, I don't know how I'd feel if I was Chelsea Davy, having moved on, had a baby with someone else, to be mentioned more than 120 times in his witness statement and have my name dragged through court. But Prince Harry clearly thinks that this case is bigger than everyone involved in it.
It's going to be a tough one at the end to win, you'd have to think. Camilla, thank you so much for being with us, as always. It's never dull.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Harry has faced a second day of questioning in his phone hacking case against the publisher of the Daily Mirror. 9 Europe correspondent Brett McLeod has more. Good morning, Brett. At one point, the Prince became quite emotional giving evidence.
Yes, Alex, he was actually right at the end of the day when he was asked by his lawyer how he felt, having spent a day and a half speaking about very personal and painful details. And he said, while he was holding back some emotion, it's been a lot. Now, this comes as Prince Harry sues the Mirror newspaper group, claiming they could only have gathered articles about him through illegal means. The Mirror says there is no evidence of that. There were some interesting quotes, though, from Harry. He said he would feel an injustice if it wasn't accepted that there had been phone hacking, which led to quite a provocative follow-up question from the barrister for the newspapers. He said, "So you want to have been phone hacked?" Harry said nobody wants to be phone hacked. He said he decided to take legal action back in 2018 to, quote, stop the hate coming towards him and Meghan. He also talked about his former girlfriend, Chelsea Davey, in quite some detail. He said that a private tracker had been found on her car that he thinks has been planted by a private investigator. And at one point he turned to the judge, which is highly unusual, and spoke to the judge directly, saying, "My lord, my whole life the press have misled me, covered up their wrongdoing." Now, the trial still has 2 more weeks to run. Prince Harry has finished his evidence, and then it's expected that late this year the judge will make his decision. Alex?
Brett, thank you.
Well, Prince Harry is laying it all out there, telling a court he once found a tracking device on the car of his ex, Chelsea Davey, alleging it was placed there by a private investigator. He's suing the Mirror newspaper, saying the tabloids have resorted to unlawful means in order to target him since he was a kid.
Royal security expert Simon Morgan joins us live now. Simon, thanks so much for your time. Now, you've worked with the Prince, obviously, and other royals. What was your experience? Was he hounded by the press like he claims?
There were times within that kind of time frame, back in my time frame, that yes, it did become quite vociferous. And at the time, I couldn't really understand why, because we weren't really doing anything. It was before one of his tours to Afghanistan, and literally we were just preparing to go. We were going out and seeing friends, restaurants and things like that. But we did have the press follow us. But it was about, for us, managing that scene, certainly as a protection team, making sure that they didn't come within our footprint. But yes, it did become quite vociferous at times, just to take, in my opinion, what was the same picture over and over again.
They're such a lovely-looking couple, and it was. It's so interesting to see him so happy back in the day, and obviously clearly in love with Kelsey, and that relationship broke up because of that press hounding from her perspective. This goes to another level, though. This hacking, it's incredibly disturbing, the detail of it. Yeah. Was there anything being done inside the palace to try and combat that?
There's a lot going on at the time, and you were always mindful of any communications that you were having and who you were having them with. It was something that you were aware of, certainly, that people were listening or trying to listen to your communications. And that's not just in terms of the telephone, but, open conversations. People would kind of get close to you to see if you were going to have that conversation about what you were going to do that evening. But, there's lots of other factors at work here. We would go to restaurants and the doorman tip off the press that, kind of your principal was in at that particular time. So, you're fighting lots of different factors. But one of the main things is that there's just so much money involved in these pictures and this information.
Yeah, because it is an interesting role, obviously, as a security guard, because you're sort of trying to combat the press as well as the public, and it's trying to find that balance while maintaining your role there. I mean, it is difficult, isn't it?
It is, and you can't become too absorbed with it, because, there are actually people out there who generally wish to do you and your principals harm. So, you've got to manage them. You've got to go and talk to them. You've got to go and shake hands with the devil at times and say, look, this is an armed policing operation. Do not chase the car. Do not come within our footprint. Quite happy for you to take photographs, but, do not come within our footprint. And most of the time, they were respectful is not the quite word, but they did as they're told. But certainly when it came to members of the foreign press and the paparazzi, that was slightly different. All the gloves were off at that, and they had a totally different perspective on how they were going to achieve the results that they wanted. But you can't become too obsessed with somebody who's going to take a photograph, because there are people who generally want to do you harm.
I wanted to ask you this. When you look back on it, the security that was surrounding Harry at the time and hearing his testimony about being hacked and this information transfer between either his technology and the press or whatever, do you feel like it was a breach at the time? And the other question is, now I would have thought is a more riskier time to have your information hacked. What is in place now that wasn't in place then that will stop it?
It was certainly nothing that we were overly aware of at the time. And when you kind of go back now, yes, devices are far more security conscious around that. You are more security conscious around your information because you know how that now can be traded. So you learn from history ultimately to get to the point where you are now.
It's so interesting, just in terms of what he has around him now, even just the level of security now is private. He doesn't have the weight of what he had in the past. When you look at it now, do you see him exposed?
No, I don't see him exposed because certainly when you look at it now, he has a private security team. From that perspective, that's gone through most probably a selection procedure as to who they kind of got in place kind of for that. And when you look at these pictures over the last couple of days, there is a wider policing operation, not necessarily for the Duke, albeit security is a concern, but actually it's more of a public safety issue because of the people that are there, the large numbers of the press, and indeed people that will be drawn to coming to see the Duke at court. And you've still got all the other issues that go with it. You've got the fixated individual because obviously now the Duke doesn't live here in London. He kind of lives overseas in America. So people will be drawn to it. So actually the operation that is taking place with the uniformed officers from the City of London Police, it is more of a public safety operation than that of a security operation.
One final question for you. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to answer it, but when I look back now at the shots of Harry and Kelsey, do you think that he was happier then?
Jeez, that's a bit controversial, Carlos. What? Simon, you don't have to answer that. He's being a bit cheeky, this guy.
He's done it to me again. Done it to me again.
I love your work, Simon.
The link suddenly broke up.
Thank you, buddy. Talk to you soon.
I didn't know where you were going with that either, Carlos.
I didn't either.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
that never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?
Always happens.